Hey everybody, welcome to the Keurig Green Room. We've got Rachel Simmons here, who is, well, you're going to talk about coffee.
I'm going to talk about coffee and then whether or not you should let your kid quit camp.
She's a best-selling author and parenting expert, and we're here and I'm a parent of two. And
how old are your kids?
I've got a 7-year-old and a coming up on 1-year-old.
I have a 7-year-old.
Okay, so...
Okay, how are you sleeping? You're like, I'm asking the question.
Yeah, exactly. It's this job that makes me lose sleep. But no, but now, they're at an age, at least my oldest is, where you really need to start molding them if you haven't already. And so there are situations where I think, oh God, it's time for me to be a parent. So that's why you're here, to help me with that.
Okay.
If your kid is giving up, for one thing, there's so many challenges for youngsters. If your child wants to give up on something, what do you tell them?
Okay, so I think it's really important to do two things. One is you have to remember that sometimes they're not going to want to finish everything that they do, just like we don't want to. There are certain things we might quit as well. But the second thing is we don't want to let it become a pattern. So what do we actually say to them? First, we empathize. You gotta at least take the time to imagine what it's like to be a kid who is often put into new situations and expected to perform really well, and just say, you know what? I can really understand why you might be feeling frustrated or disappointed or just sad doing what it is that you're doing. So empathy is really key. It doesn't mean that you're giving them permission not to do it. It just means that you're saying, hey, I see you, I feel you, this is hard. And that means a whole lot for kids, especially, at any age, but definitely if we're talking about teenagers, it means a lot. Yeah, and so then I think you have to really talk with them about what strategies they've tried so far. Okay. So if your kid's comes home from the first day of camp and is like, I'm out, I'm not into it, one question after you empathize might be, tell me what strategies you tried today to make it work. Mm-hmm. Tell me what you did when things were going south for you. If you went and rolled in a ball in the corner, metaphorically speaking, mm-hmm. maybe there are other things that you might try that we could talk about.
So it's me saying, listen, kid, I paid for this 2 weeks up front. You're going to camp.
Sure, you could drop the money. You could drop the money card off, or you could just be like, hey, I think it's really important for you to be brave and not give up on something, because you're not going to be happy with yourself if you walk away too soon.
I do find that when I say to my daughter, hey, so are you feeling nervous about such and such? That's okay. It's normal.
Yeah, well, I would say being nervous, it means you care. That's what I tell my kid. That's what I tell my students. When you're nervous, that's a good sign. It doesn't mean that you should run away. It means you care, you want to do well.
So what are some of the things you shouldn't say, other than I paid for it up front?
Well, I don't think you want to say things like, hey, if you don't like it, you can come home. Or, I actually, honestly, before I was doing this segment with you guys, I was thinking about this for my own daughter, who has decided to smash my dreams into pieces by not playing organized sports. Why? Why? So anyway, this was part of the reason I had a child. I'm just kidding, friends, but maybe not a little bit. Okay, so I'm like, why don't you want to play sports? Please just play soccer this fall. Just go 5 times, and if you don't like it, you can quit. And then I talked to a friend of mine who runs a summer camp, and she said, that's actually the worst thing you can say to your kid, because it gives them a ripcord. It basically lets them pull out whenever they feel like it, as opposed to saying, I want you to give it your all, I want you to do your best, I'm going to back you up, we're going to talk about the strategies.
And then why is it important? Obviously, the mantra, do your best, do your best, do your best. You can say you did your best, you can say you're going to try to do your best, that doesn't always happen, but why is it important to tell your child to just do your best?
Because this is a great question, because actually it's not about winning all the time. I think a lot of parents kind of take things in the wrong direction by saying, I need you to do the best as opposed to your best. And doing the best puts kids in a position of always having to compare themselves to other kids around them, whereas opposed to doing your best is what am I most capable of? And that's really what we want to develop in our kids from the youngest age, not being the best, but doing their best and knowing what that looks like, right? Not every kid is able to connect with what does it mean to do my best? And that's a question you guys can answer together over lots of different challenges.
For the record, my daughter plays a little soccer, but not as much
so
as I
jealous
would like.
right now?
A little bit, I really
Do you
push
coach
her.
the team?
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, all right. That's my dream. That's my fantasy.
Yeah.
Coach the team.
Well, you're more of an athlete than I am. I'm more of a dollhouse and tea party kind
Are
of
you
guy.
really?
Yes, but,
Okay,
so
I love
hopefully
that.
we're going to fix that when my son gets older. So, what's heartbreaking and so frustrating as a parent when you see your child is upset, about whatever. And I'm getting upset now thinking about it. Obviously if they get physically hurt, then your heart just completely breaks. But if they're emotionally wrapped up in something, as a parent, you kind of get shaken up yourself.
Of course.
So how do you combat that and get through it and to give them comfort?
It's another great question. I mean, listen, as parents, we are wired to protect our children. So when we see them in pain, our instinct is to immediately stop that pain. But, and this is a big but, your children sometimes need to be suffering in order to learn. And I know that sounds crazy, but if you think about the things that you have fought hardest to win in your life, my guess is you've had to struggle a little bit in the process. So we as the parents have to decide, is the struggle, the pain that I'm seeing my kid in, what do they have to gain by sticking it out versus what do they have to lose if they stop? And that's our job. That's one of the great kind of judgment calls as a parent that you have to learn to make.
And some, empathy too is, I know that hurts, I know that's painful or whatever. It always kind of cushions the blow a little bit.
Absolutely.
But there's your kid's going to get in a rut just like we all do as adults, moping around because they haven't been successful either at school or sports or whatever activities they're in. How do you get your kid to stop moping around and get back on track?
Well, I think it's okay to let them mope a little bit, right? Like if they have a bit of a broken heart, just like any of us. I mean, I don't think kids are that different from us. Just ask yourself as a parent, do you sometimes need to mope and like binge watch something or not think or feel for a little while? Like that's okay if your kid needs to play video games for a couple of days, but you don't let it go on too long. And you also remind them, listen, failure is part of learning. Failure is part of how we figure out who we are and what we want to do. So let's think of one thing that you want to try next that makes you happy. Again, not what makes the parent happy, right? So I'd be making a mistake if I was like, let's think of one basketball team that you'd like to join. Like, that's not going to be a really useful question for my daughter. And she might say, like, I want to do something like princessy. And okay, like I got to roll with that as long as it involves challenging her, trying something new. It's all about flexing that muscle of getting back up and keeping on trying new things.
I do have a role in the princess stuff.
Do you have a favorite princess?
Well, I mean, look here. Elsa, of course.
Obviously. We just saw Frozen. It's very exciting.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
The whole cast was in here a couple weeks ago. It was amazing. Yeah.
That's a major perk of the job. Did you bring your daughter in for that?
I brought her to the opening of Frozen.
Oh my God.
Yeah, she
lucky
kid.
But
I think I was.
I think you're a dad of the year.
Look, the cold doesn't bother me anyway. That whole line by Elsa, that's kind of my mantra as a weather.
Cold doesn't bother you anyway?
No, it doesn't.
That was amazing. Nice.
You want me to sing the whole song?
I mean, it's.
No, we'll hold you to that.
Okay.
I have one more thing to ask you. I can't remember what it is. Well, you're on GMA today.
I just was.
Oh, did you see it? It was amazing.
It was amazing.
Outside frolicking with.
It was amazing. I love talking with
George.
George because he often will just surprise me with new questions that I didn't know were coming.
What did he surprise you with today?
Well, he just decided he wanted to start with the fact that one of his daughters loved camp and the other one didn't, and like, what do you do when they call and they're freaking out, they want to come home? And we just sometimes, but I love that because it reminds me of playing sports. Talking to George is like playing sports because you kind of like are on the field and you never know what's coming. But it's my jam. I like it.
All right. Well,
it's not my daughter's jam. Have I mentioned that?
Gosh, so disappointed.
I'm really getting out. What's your copay? I'm really getting out a lot of my feelings.
Our next
right
conversation is how parents cope with disappointment. All right, look, you can see this all day long on Facebook. We're also going to post the interview with George, and you can see just how surprised Rachel.
I have a really good poker face, though. That's why they invited me back.
I don't want to play poker with you. I don't want to play sports with you. You're kind of intimidating.
Do I seem hardcore?
Yeah.
Oh, I think
I'll
I blew it.
With you. I'll take that advice.
Okay.
Anyway, emasculated Rob Marciano here along with Rachel Simmons. Hope you got some tips out of that. Thanks.
Thanks. Nice to meet you too.